I'm a native of Holly Springs, Mississippi, born and raised there. Left there at the ripe age of 17 to go off into the military. When I departed the military, I landed in Dallas, Fort Worth, and shortly afterwards came to know the Lord and plugged into a local church, met my wife-to-be, married her, and we started our family there in Texas. My wife is a native of Texas.
After working in a Texas church for several years, Pastor DeBerry felt compelled by his faith to start a church in Holly Springs, Mississippi, the area where he grew up, with the goal of bringing hope and help where it was deeply needed. But soon, Pastor DeBerry discovered the laws of Holly Springs were stacked against his church, and any church.
I needed to do a survey, conduct a survey in the community, a quarter-mile radius around the facility, wherever we wanted to exist, and get the approval of these people, regardless of what their faith was, regardless of what their opinion of the church was, that I would have to go to Satan worshipers, perhaps, and ask them for the permission to exist.
Pastor DeBerry was ordered to get the permission of all the property owners in the downtown area of Holly Springs, including liquor stores and every other business, if he wanted to put his church there. Incredibly, this law only applied to churches.
So I asked to see the ordinance, and the ordinance, this was strictly for churches, and throughout the rest of the ordinance, no other organization were required to do anything remotely similar to this. And I know that at least 2 other churches had come up against this ordinance prior to us, and I just thought that that was inappropriate, that the church would have to go to the liquor store owner to ask for permission to exist, as opposed to the liquor store owner having to come to the church to ask for permission to exist, and that didn't happen both ways.
After fulfilling every other requirement, Pastor DeBerry asked if he could plant his church without doing the city's impossible survey. Their answer was short, but not sweet.
I went before the board and I had done everything else that they expected me to do, with the exception of this one survey. And I said, well, this wasn't fair. And they said they wouldn't hear no more from me until I accomplished that.
Having heard of Liberty Institute from a radio talk show, Pastor DeBerry called with the hope of getting some legal advice on how to best proceed.
At Liberty, as well as ourselves, we assumed that the city would not take this any further than the initial letter. We sent a demand letter. In our demand letter, we revealed to them that their ordinance was in direct contradiction to an existing federal law. And so we just knew any common sense guided people would see the error of their way, and this would all be behind us very soon, and we'd move forward. Well, there was no response to the letter. They believed in their ordinance, and they weren't going to budge.
Liberty Institute immediately came to the aid of Pastor DeBerry, setting processes in motion to resolve the issue and help the church reach its goal. But when Liberty Institute attorneys explained to the city that it was violating the law, the city dug in its heels against the church.
They believed in their ordinance, and they weren't going to budge.
Pastor DeBerry began to face the dark reality that this was not a simple oversight, but an intentional and hateful plot to keep churches out of the city. And it got even worse when the federal district court judge agreed with the city. But Pastor DeBerry and Liberty Institute kept fighting. Hiram
Sasser, our attorney, said, well, we'll be going to the Fifth Circuit. We'll appeal it to the Fifth Circuit. And he assembled an awesome team, and we appealed it to the Fifth Circuit.
And the result? Pastor DeBerry's church won a resounding victory at the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, setting a precedent that gives freedom to thousands of churches and impacts countless millions of lives.
One of the most significant victories that we've had at Liberty Institute, protecting churches to engage in their ministry, comes from Mississippi, where a small African-American church was denied the right to even exist. Fortunately, we were successful at the Fifth Circuit, striking down that discriminatory ordinance, and today that church exists in the heart of Mississippi.
Liberty Institute stood by this small church and fought against the hateful discrimination, but they are not the only ones. Discriminatory laws against churches are spreading across the landscape of America, and Liberty Institute will fight them in court.
As de Tocqueville recognized over 200 years ago, the strength of America comes from churches and people of faith. If churches are restricted in their freedom, the ability to engage in public life, then that strength that de Tocqueville recognized so many years ago will be in jeopardy. And thus America will not be the America that we've grown up with.
And as Liberty Institute prepares to help other churches and communities, back in Holly Springs, there's a new church ministering to people right in the middle of town.
We moved into our facility the Sunday before Resurrection Sunday this year. We had a nice turnout. We had a great service. It's been good.